This is My Brain. I'm Jeremy Scott Gibbs. With me, my ever-faithful co-host, Tony Bradley. And we've been talking about love for the last couple episodes, so we're going to continue to talk about love. Mm-hmm. And we're going to dive into a couple different things. We want to start right up with our disclaimer. Go ahead and read the wall, Mr. Bradley.
Well, it says, notice this place is politically incorrect. We say, Merry Christmas, one nation under God. We salute our flag and give thanks to our troops. And if this offends you, leave.
Yep. So this is has a couple of these episodes have been posted on formerly my HFTC church channel. It's still the church channel. We've done some stuff on there, but these should be posted on the Don't Make This, or This Is My Brain, and the Don't Make This Weird pages. But either way, those of you that have known me in the past know me just church-wise, this is the full me. This is the unfiltered, uncensored me up here sharing. And I never made it a mystery who I was.
Right.
But here I'm, instead of saying that I do cuss and not cussing during a sermon, I am, I may cuss. And seeing how when we're recording this is not the proper time, we're having tea and Mountain Dew, but that's what we would be having if it was later in the evening. So,
that's right.
That's the disclaimer. Hey, if you want to hear some good stuff for some real people, keep listening.
Right.
If you are uptight and can't handle a couple things, then you can't handle it.
Well, and I'd like to throw a caveat in there is this is exactly what you need to be listening to challenge your thought process.
Yeah.
To truly define what those definitions are, because maybe you've learned them incorrectly.
Right.
Or, you've taken an opinion and based your life's work on that fact of someone's opinion and not truly understanding what the definition is.
Yeah.
So laying a lot of the groundwork of going to what the definition is and then talking about our personal experiences with each other and other people that we've come across in our life.
Right.
To make an even broader foundation of going, okay, is this what you're experiencing?
Yeah.
Let's have some time and discuss this and come to, a mutual agreement, or, hey, maybe we walk away with this agreeing to disagree.
Yeah, exactly.
But still the conversation is had that everybody wants to have and are not maybe mature enough to do so.
So let's do that. Okay, we're going to get into our main subject, but I want to go over this, okay? When you're talking about classical debates.
Yes.
And we've talked about it. Critical thinking, classical debates. The first thing you do, grammar, logic, rhetoric.
Right.
So grammar, from the Webster's 1828. In practice, the art of speaking or writing a language with propriety or correctness according to the established use. So when we're talking about grammar, we're talking about using it in practice, the art of speaking or writing a language according to its established usage. So whenever we're dealing with stuff, we're talking about stuff, we always like to go back for our own personal studies. If I ever share this stuff, there's some things that I've learned 10 years ago that I've never talked about. I've studied it, but you know what? It wasn't time for me to share it. It was just for me.
Right.
But either way, when you're dealing with it, the first step in debate or critical thinking or even mainly debate, but I mean argument.
Right.
Because they say a heated argument. Well, an argument was supposed to be a formal
exchange.
Right. And it's turned into, whenever you say argument, that's usually illogical, feeling-based shouting matches. Well, we're talking about grammar, logic, and rhetoric.
It turns into a name-calling fiasco or a defamation of character.
Right.
As opposed to, here's the ideology. Let's explore this and not attack each other.
Right.
In the process of all of this. And yet, you have people all the time slinging mud left, right, and center.
Yeah.
Because you're challenging their belief systems, or you go back and you talk about a specific definition.
Yep.
And they go, well, that's not what I was taught. You're wrong.
No. So that's what we're doing. So I want to establish this because we're going to keep going forward, especially in all of these episodes, and we're always going to do this, okay? Grammar, logic, and rhetoric, okay?
What's the definition of logic?
The definition of logic, well, let's simplify the definition of grammar before I move on to that one, and then I'll read logic. But the definition of grammar, and I just said to you, it's the proper usage. Just think of grammar as the correct definition.
Right.
All right? So if we're reading the Constitution,
Right.
which was written in ratified in 1789,
Yep.
okay, then we need to go back to, as close as we can, the dictionaries of those days. Webster's 1828 is close enough in that era,
Right.
because words change over time through society,
Absolutely.
through attrition, through whatever. And so we need to always go back. If you're going to read stuff, I have on here as well, Etymology Online, which is
Right.
a really good resource.
Good stuff.
And so you can go through the etymology, and it'll tell you when the word was first used, in whatever country it was used, in whatever
Right.
language, and how it morphed and how it got used, because English is a very bastardized language. So grammar, we start with grammar. We want to have our definitions first.
Right.
In proper context, proper usage.
Absolutely.
Not today's urban dictionary of grammar or of
Yeah.
the definition. We want to go back to when this word was being used first. Then logic. It's the art of thinking and reasoning justly. Logic is the art of using reason well in our inquiries after truth and the communication to others. So think of it this way. Logic is removing the contradictions.
Right.
That's the way I was taught it. So grammar is your definition. Okay?
Right.
So I've got 3 words on the table. But these 2 words are conflicting with each other.
Right.
So I have to work on the logic
Right.
of how to remove the contradictions. The art of thinking and reasoning justly. Just.
Right.
If we look up the word just, we would understand that it means to be set right.
Of course.
Correctly. So logic is the art of using reason well in inquiries of truth. So I want to reason this out.
Right.
I want to work this out, but I've got to have my definitions, and then I've got to cause them to fit together. We can't have cognitive dissonance. We can't have mental disharmony or disunity. We have to have it be dissonant. If anybody's ever been a musician and you've hit 2 chords that don't go together, okay?
Right.
That's a dissonant chord.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you can make it work. There's a few songs out there that have some really cool usage of dissonant chords, but normally it's just it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
Because they don't go together. So when we're talking about it, we go grammar, definitions, logic, we're working out the contradictions,
Right.
and making sure this is harmonious. And then the last word, rhetoric, is literally just explaining it. Let me get to it. Yeah, there it is. I always forget the H. Like, why isn't that? So it's the art of speaking propriety, elegance, and force. So what we're doing in this is my brain broadcast, is we're laying out definitions.
Yeah.
We're removing the contradictions to those.
Right.
And then we're speaking in accordance with that. So that's critical thinking.
Reread
That's
that again real quick. Just what those 3 descriptive
the
words.
art of speaking with propriety,
Okay.
elegance, and force.
That's interesting how that is noted
Yeah.
of propriety, elegance.
Yeah. And force.
And force.
It's pretty sweet, isn't it? The second definition is the power of persuasion or attraction with that which allures or charms. We speak of rhetoric of the tongue and rhetoric of the heart and eyes.
Right.
So you're presenting a persuasive argument.
Right.
But it's predicated on the other 2, that we're not using an incorrect definition.
Right.
And we don't have contradictions within the
Right.
dialogue.
Right.
Okay? So we're bringing you something. Yeah, I'm trying to persuade you to love people.
Right.
To be good to people.
Right.
So I'm going to use some good definitions and some proper, remove the contradictions in that. I want to see what that word propriety looks like. And then we're going to get into
The third part of our discussion of love and all of the things that fall into what we want to discuss about that and exploring the ins and outs of, hey, everybody else is having this conversation, but nobody wants to talk about those uncomfortable subjects.
Right.
Or they're maybe not mature enough, or if they are mature enough, there's not somebody in their sphere of influence that they can open up and have those conversations about because, well, it's uncomfortable, it's awkward, it's weird.
So propriety is property, particularly or exclusive right of possession, ownership. So when you're talking about rhetoric,
You're taking
ownership of the words coming out of your mouth because you're based on a good, solid foundation of the definition. You've removed the contradictions from the words, and now you're speaking in a ownership manner. You're taking ownership. See, and that's not amazing to me. It's another thing that confirms everything. But Jesus said, do what the chief priests and the Pharisees say, but don't do what they do, because they speak hollow words. They're empty words. They're just putting words out there. That was one of the things they marveled at Jesus. They're like, Master. They come up to him all the time and they're like, you don't speak like the scribes and the Pharisees. You speak with one that has authority. And he's like, yeah, my words, I own my words. I'm taking responsibility of my words.
Absolutely.
And the way that you have absolute confidence in your words, ownership of your words, is you go back to the definitions and you remove the contradictions, because you can't say one thing out of the side of your mouth and then say another thing out of the other side of your mouth and expect them to line up.
My grandmother taught me all of the time from when I was very, very little. She said, look, let your yeses be yeses and your no's be no.
Exactly.
And I didn't realize that, she was teaching me stuff that was straight out of the Bible. And I went, your yeses be yeses and your no's be no's. What does that mean?
Yeah.
And, it's one of those things that if you're going to say yes, don't make it a maybe or really, I don't want to do this. Or if it's a no and there's that unsurety there. And it's really a yes, but for whatever reason there's a block in the way, don't be back and forth. Don't be indecisive. Yes is yes, no is no, and know the difference.
So you wanted to get into intimacy. I wanted to get into another one as well along that lines. Let's cover intimacy. I want to cover some things in balance in Ecclesiastes, and I want to talk about absolutes as well. So let's deal with the intimacy aspect, and let's talk about that first. And then I want to get into again talking about some balance in our lives, and then I want to deal with the absolutes, because in the church specifically, but in life, there's all these. The church says, this is absolutely sin, and this is absolutely this, and this is absolutely this, and this is absolutely this, and this is absolutely this. And I go, no, the love of a child is absolute. The love of friends is absolute.
It's unapologetic.
You're putting absolutes in these other areas that are ultimately should be gray areas. Okay. Case in point, alcohol is absolute. I've watched them struggle. Alcohol is absolutely. That's nobody should drink alcohol. Oh, Paul said to Timothy to drink a little wine for your stomach's sake. Well, yeah, I guess if you need some, okay. So you've never drank alcohol in your life? No, never touched my life. You ever had any Vicks Formula 44? Cough medicine, cold medicine? Well, yeah. Well, that contains alcohol. I mean, so Well, we
look at the Puritans when they came over. That was the first beer run because they were out of fresh water. So they had to stop because they were in the ocean. If you drink salt water, it doesn't end well.
You die.
But there was the first beer run, and these were the Puritans. People so uptight that England kicked them out.
Well, and that's the thing. People don't get that, man. That most of the water, a lot of the water, especially in the large metropolitan areas in the ancient world,
was tainted.
And if you didn't process it and turn it into beer or grog or something along that line of
mead or
something like that,
whatever,
then you risk the very real possibility of contamination. That's why when Jesus talks about being the water and being being the water of life, and then he talks about how the lukewarm water, and I'll spit you out of my mouth, and realizing that city was dead center between a hot spring and a cold spring that actually flowed together. So by the time the water got to the city, whether it came from one or the other, it was lukewarm. They understood that very well. But when you're talking about water, and back then, one of the ways they purified water was to make beer out of it, or to make grog, or
spirits.
To make mead, make spirits out of it, because you're distilling it and you're doing things with it to make sure it's purified. They wouldn't think of just doing a distillery to make clean water. They're like, if we're gonna do it, then we're gonna do some flavoring with it. We're gonna go through the process of doing it. We're gonna distill it, properly. So, anyways, that's another aspect. Whereas, absolutely, alcohol is absolute. And I go, what about this and what about this? And then we go, kids aren't supposed to drink it.
Right.
As soon as you turn the magic number 21 in America,
Dun, dun.
now you can drink it.
Right.
So up until this point, it's absolutely, you cannot have it. You cannot have it. Cannot have
Right.
it. It's a sin. But now it's okay. And then, I mean, it's funny because I've got family that are Catholic, so we've been to a couple funerals and a couple weddings and stuff. And you go from the church to the rectory, and the rectory has the kegers set up in there. I mean, it's like, okay, so
Who were you spending time with? I was with the friars getting lit all day.
Exactly. And then, I mean, they do real wine when they do communion and all sorts of, so there's different facets of it, but there's all these absolutes that people get into, and we're going to get into that more in detail. Let's talk about intimacy.
Well, and that's when we were talking about this, and what was the next logical step of defining what love is. Intimacy for me, because it's one of those things that forever in my life I've struggled with. Appropriate intimacy.
Right.
But then realizing once you understood the full definition, it's a constant exchange with anybody that you're talking to. There's different intimacies. Let me get into the definition.
All right.
So the first one, it's a noun. It says close familiarity or friendship closeness, the intimacy between a husband and wife. Everybody's pretty familiar with that, right? The next definition is a private, cozy atmosphere. The example they give, the room had a peaceful sense of intimacy about it.
Which is pretty descriptive of the man cave.
The man cave, right. The next one, an intimate act, especially sexual intercourse.
Obviously.
Pretty cut and dry.
To this.
Right.
The full level of
consummation.
And
then the next one is an intimate remark. It's a plural noun. Intimacies is the example they give here. Here, she was sitting swapping intimacies with a stranger.
Yeah.
And then the last definition that's here is closeness of observation or knowledge of a subject. He acquired an intimacy with Swahili literature.
The Webster's 1828, because you're reading off of...
this is the Merriam-Webster's...
Okay. So this is from the 1828 Webster's Dictionary.
Yeah.
Close familiarity or fellowship, nearness and friendship.
Right.
That's the total definition. So I'm going to type in intimate.
Yeah.
And see if that gives us what that gives us. Taking a second. It kept auto-correcting me. Inmost, inward. This is the first definition.
Okay.
So for intimate. Inmost, inward, internal, as intimate impulse.
Right.
Number 2, near or close. He was honored with the intimate and immediate admission. Number 3, close in friendship or acquaintance, familiar, as an intimate friend, intimate acquaintance. And in that's just about it. I mean, there's a few more, root word types, but it's
right.
So the Webster's 1828 doesn't even touch on sex. It just talks about closeness and a connection, a deep connection,
right?
On a very close level. I think of, when I look at that, I think of in Scripture, Paul wrote and he said, "Greet one another with a holy kiss."
Right.
And I think of even a lot of still that area of the world still greets each other.
Yeah.
With a kiss on the cheek,
right.
And they're not even, this doesn't matter whether they're believers or not. They just greet one another and that's a very intimate thing. It's one thing to walk up to a man and shake his hand or fist bump, but for two men to walk up, embrace each other, kiss each other on the cheek, and sometimes they kiss each other on each cheek.
Right.
And so you're very much in an intimate in exchange at that moment.
Absolutely.
And it's very personal.
Right.
And so that's a very...
and it's a term of endearment based off the culture. Yeah. And when
Judas kissed Jesus.
Right, exactly.
He said, "Master," and gave him a kiss.
Right.
And we look at that and go, he was Jesus. You got to study a little bit on Judas. That's a topic for another day. But he was one of Jesus. I asked the Lord one day, I said, "What about Judas? Remember when the Gospel of Judas came out? He was one of my best friends." I went, "What?" He goes, "Go back through it. Nobody knew what he was stealing from the bag until I told him."
Right.
Nobody knew that he was who he was, that he was going to do what he did until they did it. In fact, when they went around the table,
Yeah.
and he said, "One of you is going to betray me,"
Right.
every single one of them went, "Is it me? Is it me?
Right.
Is it me?"
Right.
They all felt that they were capable of doing that.
Of course.
And it ended up being one of them was because he was tied to money.
Right.
He stole from the bag.
Right.
He was losing his job. Jesus
Right.
says, "I'm leaving." And he's
Right.
like, "Oh, shit, I'm going to be without work." And he goes, "What am I going to do?"
Right.
And he goes, "Well, the priests are offering me money."
Right.
And you go, "Well, that's easy." And I go, No. Jesus was on several other occasions about to be arrested and
Right.
taken away, and he walked away.
Right.
So Judas goes, "I'm losing my job. My friend is leaving me.
Right.
I can go and cash out." And he's walked through the crowd 100 other times.
Right.
So I'll be good.
Right.
So he goes and he does that, and he comes back and he kisses him, right?
Right.
And he it's not a kiss of the twisted mustache,
The maniacal
kissing you,
villain.
Lord,
Yeah.
yes. No, it was, "I'm desperate and I'm sorry. I don't
Right.
know what else to do. You
Right.
didn't really give me instructions, and I love money."
Right.
And so he kisses him and he walks away. And when you continue to read the text, it says that once Judas saw that Jesus was betrayed to death,
Right.
what did he do? He threw the money back in the temple,
Right.
and he went and hung himself.
Right.
So that tells you right there that he was not the nobody knew who he was there healing sick, raising the dead, preaching the gospel, just like the rest of the guys. Nobody thought any different of Judas than they thought of anybody else in the group.
Right.
Okay. Except for maybe like John, who was really, really close to the Lord. Right.
Right.
But Jesus says he's one of my best friends. And I go, wow, man. And so you can't, so when you walk in love, you've got to have that tempering effect to know that
Exactly.
some people do things out of desperation
Right.
and fear.
Oh, yeah.
And they may be intimate with you. They may be close with you. And the next thing you know, you're like, dude, you're doing this?
Right.
But if you step back and you go, I understand. I understand your heart. I don't agree with what you're doing,
Right.
but I understand your heart. And that's where I can forgive you. That's where I can love you, And I know the Lord didn't want Judas to hang himself. He wanted to restore him just like he restored
Right.
Peter.
Oh, yeah.
But Judas.
Well, in the context of that, didn't Jesus say, go do what you do?
Yeah, he told him. He said, you're going to do what you're going to do.
Right.
Go do it. I mean, he literally told him to go do it.
Right.
He's like, you've decided in your heart what you're going to do.
Right.
Now go do it.
Right.
And it was necessary. He needed somebody close to him to deliver him to the people that were not close to him that wanted to kill him.
Right.
There was no other way. Every time they tried to seize him,
Yeah.
it wasn't happening.
Right.
And the text almost makes it seem like who is this Jesus and what's really going on? Like
Right.
they couldn't get close to him. They're like, no, they were confronting him all the time.
Right.
That's the way the Lord works.
Right.
If there's something's going to happen, it's going to be from your inner circle. It's going to be
Absolutely.
because it's just there's a dynamic in that. It's just you're betrayed by your friends, and so that's why you have to be wise in friendship, but can't be fearful either.
Right.
I've had a number of people that are close to me that very intimate with me that turned on me. Either turned on me or turned on a situation we were both involved in, which is turning on me, but it wasn't
Right.
directed at me. But then you go, okay, and I go, Lord, what about, and he goes, just keep loving them, just
Right.
work through it. And I go, okay, because he's like, you failed other people.
Right.
And I go, really? And he takes me back in my memory and goes, remember that? And I go, yeah. And I said, that didn't seem like it. He goes, their perception was
Right.
this. And I go, wow, okay. But either way, so I wasn't going to go down Judas, but that's, I've had a couple of incidences recently where, I had to endure that with people where they were just straight up.
When you look at that, though, it's par for the course of, that's another element of what love is.
Right.
When you have an intimate relationship with someone and what's the word I'm looking for? You've spent time, you've spent energy.
Right.
There's constant acts of love through intimacy. And yet, when you separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak, and you're like, it's just like you said, wow, really? This is what it's come down to?
Yeah.
After
All this time and all this
Right.
expression together,
Oh yeah.
now all of a sudden, you're doing this.
Right.
And I go, over money?
Right.
Really?
Right.
It's like,
Well, and I look at a lot of the similarities with our friendship over the years. You know, the decline, the restoration, you know, the missteps, all of that stuff. I mean, granted, it's never been a physical encounter where we're pummeling the crap out of each other. But in the same token, there's a lot of that mental and emotional processes that both of us have experienced through all of this. Mm-hmm. And we're going, you know, I think I'm good. I'm going to sit this one out.
Right.
And yet being restored and that forgiveness and that intimacy far outweighed any of that other negative garbage, because it's like I don't like who I am in absence of you.
Right.
Because you help me have a better understanding of who I am as a person and my intimate relationships with everyone else around me, because you and I have talked about stuff that nobody will ever hear about, because that was a moment in brotherhood between the two of us that, you know, you don't get that way without having that intimacy and that vulnerability and that brotherly love.
Right, exactly.
Because, you know, we've earned that with each other. Mm-hmm. And it's incredible when people, you know, let me backstep for a minute. When people, you hear someone use the word intimate.
Right.
You know, the first definition that they have learned is, it's between a husband and a wife and it's about sex.
Right. And they can't move beyond that concept.
Right. I mean, but yet
But I read the 1828 definition, and it
has nothing to do with
nothing to do with sex. You read the Merriam-Webster's definitions, and it had only the second definition?
1, 2,
third definition.
3, third definition. But there's 5 other definitions.
Inmost, inward, internal, as an intimate impulse, near or close in friendship or acquaintance, familiar.
Right.
Intimate friends, intimate acquaintances, nothing to do with sex.
Right.
And so when we talk about intimacy, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about knowing each other, you know, in the depth of our being.
Right.
And it's one thing, especially I've looked at this in church too, where if you don't, I used to say this, that one of the problems in church, and you've got this in a lot of the big churches, and then you've got it, one area you've got it in the big churches, right? Nobody knows each other.
Right.
They're acquainted, but they're not really intimate.
I know of you, but I don't know you.
I mean, I know of people that have gone to a particular church for a year, 2 years.
Yeah.
And then somebody in the staff, somebody in leadership, or even greeters or something like that, welcome them one day after they've been going for 2 years and say, "Is this your first time here?" And they go, "No, I've been sitting here for 2 years."
Right.
"What do you mean, is this my first time? How long have you been here?"
Yeah.
And it's so big you get lost. But then the other dichotomy is that what happens in smaller churches sometimes is it gets so close to everybody, and that becomes dangerous because they're disingenuous. You've got close to me.
Or they're all in your business.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You've gotten close to me, and we're intimate, and I've got the dirt. Not I've got your back.
Right.
Because it literally says in Scripture that we're to cover over the failings of the weak. We're to cover our sins, cover our friends, cover our brothers. We're to cover their nakedness.
Absolutely.
We're supposed to do that. And they go, "Do you mean cover up if there's a scandal?" No, I mean,
Thank you, Fox News.
When somebody's in having difficulty, you shield them, you protect them until they get through that difficulty. You know, if they're touching little kids, no. You know what I'm saying? But we're talking about having difficulties in their life. You don't go broadcast their stuff to try to gain popular points for yourself.
That's what I love about a lot of the stuff that the media covers, and the people that are smart when it comes to a death with somebody that's famous. The family, the ones that are very outspoken about certain things. Yeah, they go, "Please give us time to grieve and process this."
Exactly. Respect our privacy.
Right. And some of these other people make it a huge fiasco of, "No, come on in, do whatever, forget about the grieving process because we're more about ratings
Right.
and creating drama and toxicity.
Absolutely.
As opposed to, please respect our wishes.
Right.
Give us some time and space to grieve and process this loss.
Right.
And
It's almost this thing of like when some of the big scandals have come down from churches.
yeah,
They want to. Part of the problem is you've got a lot of those ministries that railed against certain things.
Yeah.
That were just, we're you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do this and you should do that and the Lord's going to get you if you don't do this right and He's going to do this, and you go, wow. And then the next thing you know, they're like, caught with a prostitute and a bunch of porn under the seat and a bunch of other stuff, and you go, well, maybe you shouldn't have been pointing the finger at everybody else trying to tell everybody what to do, and you wouldn't get caught like that.
Yeah.
But the problem, the real problem is that they didn't deal with their own stuff, and they were trying to tell everybody else how to deal with their stuff.
right.
And they didn't have anybody that was intimate enough with them to, first of all, know what they were dealing with in the beginning.
Right.
The beginning stages of it.
Right.
And correct them,
Right.
or at least offer words of correction and words of warning to say, dude,
What are you doing?
we all get tempted.
Right.
But if you go down this road and she ends up in your car,
Right.
it's not going to be good.
It's
And
not gonna end well.
what's our overall agenda here? What's our overall motive here?
Is it exposing it or helping them process it to move forward through it?
Yeah. And so it's in the beginning stages when
Yeah.
they're having the initial struggles that they need people close to them and intimate with them so that they can have the opportunity to fix it in a safe environment.
Yeah.
But most of the time they hide it,
Right.
and they don't have people close enough to them.
Absolutely.
And then I think of any celebrity. Michael Jackson's one of them, but I think of any celebrity that has all of a sudden just scandal and an implosion,
Yeah.
right? And you think all they had around them was people that would say yes.
Yes, man.
Yes men.
Yes.
That were paid.
Yeah.
They never had anybody to get in their face and tell them they were wrong. And it was interesting. We just rewatched Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah.
And in that movie, it's like at the end and it was somewhat dramatized, but the guitar player and the drummer were executive producers and were there every day on set. So I mean,
Right.
whatever they fudged of the timelines and stuff like that,
Right.
the intent was true. And it's interesting that they had this scene at the end when Freddie Mercury says, I want to come back and be with the band, and they're like, okay, well, you're gonna have to do that. And they're like, he's like, I miss you guys. He's like, I left and I did these couple of albums.
Right.
And he said they did exactly what I wanted, and it sucked.
Yeah.
And he's like, I want your sneers, and I want your
Right.
pushback, and I want your
Right.
attitudes, and he's like, I need the opposition that you guys bring to me because you make me better by not letting me go with my first instinct on every single thing that I'm doing.
Right.
You let me, you help me do that. And that's, so many of these people don't have somebody in their life that goes, dude, you're really fucking up.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to take you behind closed doors and really tell you, hey, stop doing this.
Right.
You're really messing this up. And that's what intimacy allots. Intimacy says, come here. The way you did that, dude, was wrong.
Yeah.
You needed the way that you
Absolutely.
handled that
Absolutely.
was not right. And
Right.
they go, well, I have to lend some credence to what you're saying because of who you are in my life.
Right.
And that's one of the big things for me that intimacy does is
Right.
it allows you're close to me, you're near to me, you're that word right there, that first word, inmost.
Yes.
Inward, internal.
Absolutely.
You're inside. I mean, I jokingly say it during some course of the broadcast, but
Right.
you're the earwig in my brain.
I'm
But-
rooting around in there with a stick.
But I could have called it our brain or this is our brains or
Right.
whatever. But I didn't. This is my brain, and I'm saying you're inside. You're intimate with me.
Right.
Let's have a dialogue,
Right.
and let's do it in such a way that other people can partake of it and share in it.
Absolutely.
So that everybody's edified, everybody's built up. What are
Right.
you going? What are you getting into?
I'm just trying to find a passage here, but it was one of
It's
those.
eluding you?
Yeah, I'm not finding it, but yeah, absolutely. It's that intimacy that you have cultivated with the people that are closest to you,
Right.
that can call you on your bullshit
Yeah.
when you know better.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's. I look at a lot of this stuff that me and some of the personal struggles that I was learning to become a better father.
Right.
You know, I was a shitty father. And now I'm less shitty.
You're doing the best you can.
Right. But it was one of those
Your
things.
eyes are open to it.
Right. It was one of those things that I had several different people come to me because they were fathers themselves. Because I try to lend credence to those people that actually have a place to go, look, I've got experience doing this.
Right.
I would love to help you if you're ready to hear it.
Right.
And there's been ample times where I'm like, nope. And other times it's, hey, dude, what are you doing?
What are you doing, dude?
What, you know, and at first, because at that point in time in my life, it was that knee-jerk reaction of, no, fuck you, man. I ain't listening to you.
I got this figured out, bro. Just back
Right.
up.
But then taking a step back after the initial re-jerk or the knee-jerk reaction
Right.
of, okay, well, wait a minute. Maybe there's some sort of sustenance here that I need to listen. And, you know, you and, like I said, several other people that I've respected and admired come back and went, well, what were you getting at
Right.
with that? Because, you know, you're important in my life.
Yeah.
You know, you're a fellow brother. You're a fellow loved one that we don't always see eye to eye, but in the same token, we're helping each other guide our steps because of the intimate relationship that we have with each other moving forward through life.
Right.
And, you know, we've had thousands of conversations about, okay, how can I accomplish better coming from a deficit?
Yeah.
Because I thought this is how this definition translated.
But
I thought this is how this application
Right.
actually worked.
Most people's definitions are not taught or researched. They're just caught or assumed.
Right. And if you're using stuff in the incorrect context,
Yeah.
things go horribly awry.
Because you don't have ownership of the words that you're using.
Right.
Or the ownership that you have is specious. It's not real.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh, I own that piece of property. Do you own that piece of property?
Right.
Well, I'm going to own that. No. Do you own that thing?
Right.
You're talking like you own it.
Right.
But you don't actually own it. And when we go and we check the deed, you for damn sure don't own it. Not only that,
You're squatting.
yeah, exactly. It's like, what are you doing? So, yeah. So, I was thinking of the kids and how kids do that.
Yeah.
With the idea of when you come into with children, they always have that. When you're being a father, right? I used to tell my kids all the time, I'm like, look, if I made a mistake, I'd say, look, I'm learning to be a father while you're learning to be kids. So we got to work together.
Exactly.
But the thing that we were talking about with people, right? Kids are if you study children, and I don't mean study it, just observe kids in an environment, dude. I have done that for the last 30 plus years, okay? Being the oldest grandkid, you know, I've watched all the other grandkids, then I watched my own kids, and I watched other people's kids, and I just, you know, there isn't really an environment that I haven't been in where some little kid isn't endeared with me by the end of the day. Remember we were hanging out at Trent's place one time, and his daughter was just standoffish, and she was, you know, she just was, you know, a little sheltered.
Oh, yeah.
And she didn't want to be around anybody. And by the end of the day, I'm chasing her, she's chasing me. We're running around the yard, and of course my kids are doing their normal thing. Of course. You know, but I was like, I'm going to connect with that little girl. Right. You know, because I see that she's shy or she's introverted in this environment, and I'm going to see if I can connect her. You know, and Trent's right there, and his you know, his family's right there, and it was a good picnic and everything like that. But I remember that, you know, it was just one of many kids where they come into my environment and I'm observing and I'm seeing things. And when you were talking about it, about the people, when we were saying about they don't have anybody in their life. Right. When you watch children, dude, they will walk over to something that they know they shouldn't touch. Right. And they will look at it, they will put their finger on it, and they'll turn around and look. Yeah. Oh, yeah. To see if you're going to stop them, to see if you're going to tell them no. Right. Because they're looking for boundaries. They're looking for something. And most people in this life, if you see that they're having, especially artists and things like that, because of their talent and skill, they don't always develop the discipline that they need in other areas of their life. We've said it before that musicians and artists are notoriously undisciplined because they're so laden with talent that they just, I mean, you think about I think about people that have had talent, especially the 2 biopics that just came out with Elton John and
Oh, yeah.
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah.
Both of them are demonstrations of people that had talent from the beginning.
Yeah.
And didn't develop the discipline to go along with it. And so they went into extremes. They went into these other areas that they shouldn't have been in. And what they needed was just like that little kid going over and touching something and you go, don't touch that.
Yeah.
They're looking for, they needed somebody in their life to provide boundaries for them, And
that's what, no, man.
That's what managers and other people are supposed to help them do.
And you look at a lot of these successful groups, especially with music, that have stood the test of time.
Yeah.
Metallica's been together for what?
35,
almost 40 years.
Is it that long?
Something like that. Yeah. I mean, we got to think it's 80. No, it was 82, 83, something like that.
Was it that long ago?
Yeah, dude. That's when No Lustful Leather came out.
Yeah, because I guess the Black Album came out in the 90s, right?
1990 is when it came out.
And we're coming up on 2020 here shortly.
Right.
So that's 20 years there plus another, So if they're in the 80s, wow, dude.
Well, and it's funny because when you look at that, obviously if anybody's seen Some Kind of Monster, you see how crazy it gets when egos and assholes go unchecked.
Right.
And, Metallica is notorious for having fairly decent management to keep them from internal
floating. And you got the undisciplined with the drugs, you got the undisciplined with
alcohol.
The lifestyle. Drugs and alcohol and all that stuff, and you just get into it gets out of control.
And it's funny because I just recently, was watching a YouTube video about how James Hetfield, which good on him, said, I got to go back to rehab.
Yeah.
Not because things were out of control.
But he just said, I need some structure.
I need some more structure.
I need somebody to tell me no.
Right. And the fact that, he has conditioned himself after... Look up anything dealing with James Hetfield. Mm-hmm. He's a very tormented soul in certain areas because he never had...
Yeah.
I don't want to say structure and boundaries.
Right.
But, when you're the king of the world, who's going to tell you no?
Exactly.
And when you're creating, imaginary things in your brain and then convincing yourself that is your reality and people are accepting that as your reality, that's an incredibly dangerous place to be because, okay, here you go. Here's the pass to go commit murder and no one gives a shit.
Right.
And, I obviously, it's apples to oranges, but experiencing some of that stuff in my earlier career as a musician of going, we're going to go into a town, we're going to play a bunch of great rock and roll music, wreck it and leave.
Right.
And, the next town comes around and you do the same thing. And the next town comes around. Now you've got husbands and boyfriends and
somebody tracking you down.
Somebody tracking you down because you came in and you played a town and you wrecked it and you left. And it's like, well, now there's... Two times over, people are going, hey.
The 3 Ds, man.
You're right.
Drugs, dames, and debauchery.
Right. And that was the thing. It's like, okay, I should probably navigate this a little better.
She never told me. But maybe I shouldn't have.
Right.
Yeah.
So that wasn't a party favor?
I'm going to leave now.
And we're done here.
And we're done.
But, it's all of that stuff of taking responsibility when someone comes to you and says no.
Yeah.
You're fucking up, man.
Yeah, exactly.
This is not okay.
And that's what love and intimacy really does.
Right.
Is it gets into your space and says, look, dude, I mean, that's what James needed. He had to come to it himself, but I mean, that's what he needed was somebody in his life. And that's what parents are supposed to do. That's what we're all supposed to do for each other is create loving environments. With my kids, I've told you this before, and we need to dedicate a whole episode just on talking about how to raise kids well.
Right.
But one of the rules I had with my kids was I said, look, if you break something and you come and tell me right away, we're good.
Right.
We're going to clean it up and we're going to move on. We're going to learn from it. If you hide it and you don't tell me,
right.
Now we've got an issue. Now you're going to incur more issues. And so when my kids I tell the one story where they were horsing around in the room and they blew out the light. you know, the ceiling light.
I remember that.
And I hear smash, and I wait. No screaming, and I start to count a little bit, and then I hear the footsteps. And all three of them come down. Dad, we broke the light. I heard. But they knew my rule.
Right.
And I said, okay, let's get the dustpan.
Right.
And let's get the the little hand broom, and let's go up and clean it up. And so we went up there and we cleaned it up.
Right.
I took the old light bulb out, safely, and then I handed one of the kids the new light bulb, and they put the new light bulb in, and we checked the light, and we made sure everything was clean and vacuumed up and everything like that. And I said, what did we learn, guys? And they're like, well, we got to pay more attention, Dad. We can't be getting too crazy. And I'm like, okay, so we learned a little bit more self-control, right? We learned how to how to be responsible and clean up after ourselves. And we also learned that if we own it, then there's very little consequence. In fact, you just have to do the immediate cleanup, and we're good to go.
Right.
And I said, and so my kids learned that from a very young age. I had very little. Well, you were around.
Yeah.
My kids didn't do that whole. I didn't do that bullshit.
Yeah.
Maybe every once in a great while.
Right.
But it was not a pattern of non-ownership. And when I get around people that don't have ownership, I have to go, all right, Lord, give me patience. Because I raised my kids to take ownership, and I was raised to take ownership, And like your grandma, it's like your yes be yes and your no be no, you know? And I had the same environment, I remember Grandpa Gibbs, and he's talking, and I'm like, I don't know, I was 14 or 15 or something like that, and I'm listening.
Yeah.
And he was very famous for slamming the table.
Oh, yeah.
He had those cow milking hands.
This big,
just
monster.
I mean, he was about my size, but he had, meat claws, and it was.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes, and he's talking, and he just goes, and this was one of those solid oak tables.
Oh, yeah.
Wham, like that, and he goes, and I went,
I pooped myself in there.
And I go, he goes, Jeremy, when a man's talking to you, look him in the eye, and I went,
okay.
Okay. I'd pull a Chris. And so you were saying about your the thing that you were saying
stuff with the person.
Whatever. Just start talking again, so I don't freak out. I'm gonna. I'm not blinking first.
Right.
I will pull these open.
Right.
I will never look away again. But it taught me that, and I taught my kids that.
Yeah.
Like when we're talking, you look me in the eye. That doesn't mean we have to maintain constant contact. I'm looking over here at the timer. I'm looking over at the. But at the same time, we're right here.
Make
windows of my soul.
Right. Make that connection. Don't
absolutely.
be afraid to sit there and go, hey, I need you to visualize this, not just look at me, but see exactly what I'm saying, whether I'm being animated or, I'm struggling to get through describing a process.
Yeah.
And I mean, I look at, you were talking about your kids, and that just, I got to experience some of that firsthand, and I'm like, I want to be that when I grow up. And we're about 30 seconds apart in age from each other.
I'm 46, almost 47. You just turned 44.
Just turned 43.
43.
Yeah. So, in a lot of similarities.
Younger.
Similar upbringings and similar environments with the music world and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But, I look at all of my failures, and I thank God for those, because it's made me the father that I am today.
Right.
If I'm not a person that, you thrive under duress, you thrive under ridiculous amounts of stresses, but there has to be some sort of adversary.
There's got to be some opposition
to, teach you, how do you appreciate a sunshine if it's sunny all the time?
Right.
How do you appreciate a rainstorm if it's raining all the time?
I've said it so many times, but it's a good point to always keep bringing up. When a little chick is coming out of its egg, it has been designed by God to have an egg tooth,
right?
A little tooth on the top of its beak,
yeah.
And it is able to break its way out when it's ready. Okay, if you break that chick out of its egg, prematurely, it will die.
Oh, yeah.
Because it needs the strength that it builds up to break out of the egg in order to survive. It's
Oh, yeah.
just like you and I have done seedlings.
Yeah.
You have to do seedlings under light,
Yep.
but you have to put a fan on them.
Yep.
If you don't give them some opposition, the
Yep.
minute you take them out and plant them in the garden, they have no strength.
Right.
You have to put a little fan on them.
Yep.
You got to put the light on them with the timer.
Yep.
You got to do it right. Otherwise, they don't build up the strength
Right.
to stand up when you take them out of the elements.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and we've got to have opposition, and people in our lives that are in loving relationships have that opposition. I want to touch on fathers in a minute, but do what you're going to do with that one.
I finally found what I was looking for, and it's literally just a snippet of what the verse that I was looking for, which was in Song of Solomon. And it's incredible because, you know, unless you're reading very poorly written romance novels, nobody talks like this, let alone addresses someone that they have a term of endearment for, they have an intimacy with,
Right.
or they have a vulnerability with, based off the definitions of love that we have discussed so far. You know, and here's this passage in here, and I'm not finding it in the context, but I found it in the quote, and I'm just going to read a section of it. But it says, "Behold," stop there.
Yeah.
Okay? How many times have you heard somebody go, "Wow, dude"?
Yeah. That's behold. Whoa.
Right.
Yeah. Check it out.
Right. It's grabbing your attention and going, seize this moment right here and now. And the rest of it is, "Thou art fair." Obviously, I don't speak the King's English. I never pretended to.
That's why I do New King James or NIV,
Right.
but that's cool. Do what you do.
And it's broken up in very specific, you know, notation
Yeah.
to put the emphasis where it needs to be in each one of these phrases. You know, "Behold," pause. "Thou art fair," pause. "My love," heavy pause. "Behold, thou art fair."
Pretty heavy emphasis.
Well, and that's what is incredible, because no one talks like that anymore.
Right.
Granted, the vernacular has changed through the course of the
Right.
years, where you and I see something that, you know, captures our attention. We're like, "Dude,
Check that out.
check that out."
I mean, dude, check that out.
right.
Right.
But when you...
I would have to wonder about the passage, Song of Solomon, but I'll look it up. Because, you know, the double and triple addendums in the Hebrew.
Right.
And sometimes in the Greek.
Right.
They didn't have punctuation. So what they would do is, if they wanted... Okay, so take the passage in...
It's Solomon 4.
Okay.
Because I finally found it.
So when they take the passage and they say, "Holy, holy, holy," right?
Right.
They weren't saying, "Holy, holy, holy." They were saying, "Holy." They were screaming out, "Holy."
Right.
Okay. So one holy is holy.
Right.
Two holies is holy.
Yeah.
And three holies was oh. So whenever
Yeah.
you saw a word in the Hebrew repeated,
Right.
it was an exclamation mark.
Absolutely.
That's what it meant.
Right.
So a lot of times in our translations, they just do holy, comma, holy.
Right.
You know, that to me sounds like, "Oh, thou art fair, my love."
Well,
you
and
know
I
what
mean,
I'm saying?
look
Because
at-
it's doubled up.
Look at the original context of the verse. And it's incredible, because to me, those words are the aptitude
Yeah.
of when you experience that, when you experience appropriate love, when you experience appropriate intimacy, when you experience appropriate vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because you are literally crying out with every ounce of your being
Yeah.
to go,
Well, I mean,
"You mean something to me."
whether it's a good-looking woman or any other beautiful thing in nature,
Of course.
we've all went, "Whoa."
Oh, yeah.
You know, and obviously he's talking about his beloved.
Right.
You know, he's talking about his love, and he's saying, you know, I mean, we've both been in relationships, and you go,
I'm the lucky one.
"All right," you know.
Right.
But that's exactly. Your expression
Right.
is in line with.
And you can't help but be animated, because it is something true. It's something pure. It's something innocent.
Yeah.
That is not, you know, as you've said in the past couple episodes, it's not perverted.
And that's the problem, is the perversion tries to come in and sully that, so
Right.
that you can appreciate, you know, the one you're with,
Right.
who's beautiful. That's what Song of Solomon over and over is. There's a relationship there.
Oh,
and so all of the descriptors, that go through there and how he describes, he just goes through and he's like,
the rest of this is something straight out of
a romance novel.
A romance novel.
Absolutely.
And it's incredible because when you look at
your neck's like the tower that David built, and it's like,
right.
Your breasts are like the mountains of Hermon, and it's like, dude.
When you're talking about this stuff, it's like, okay, I'm feeling kind of weird here. Why are you comparing me to the Tower of David and my teeth to goats? What?
A flock of sheep coming down the hill.
But when you experience this stuff, and you're looking for those things that are mind blowing when you experience them,
it was poetry.
Oh, absolutely!
It's a love story. It's a love, a romance poem. You know. And it's like, dude, this is,
And yet when you experience that full application of it, words elude you.
Yeah.
You cannot find the words to describe, okay, this is our brotherhood. Mm-hmm. This is our kinship. You are family to me.
Right.
That is something that is way stronger than blood. Because, we have the same haircut. We have similar tastes in jewelry and what have you. But it goes far deeper than the physical elements of connection. And that's mind-blowing because when you have those people that, intimacy. I'm going to go take care of this because she says she's hot and ready. It has nothing to do with that.
Right.
And so much more of, behold.
Yeah.
Thou art fair. My love, behold, thou art fair.
It's so much more enjoyable in a committed relationship than it is, in the passing.
Absolutely.
The emptiness. It's like, sex is sex, but intimacy with somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, I mean, that's, whether it's, I'm saying just intimacy in general.
Right.
It's like you want to be able to have somebody that you can just go, I mean, there was a prophetic word a few years back that was given to me about Pastor Ken and Monica being in our lives at that time in our lives.
Okay. And
it was literally, the Lord has placed them in your lives because you can be yourself with them.
Nice.
And behind there's sometimes where you need to talk about things and say things and do things that other people can't handle you saying.
Right.
Oh, yeah. You're trying to hide it.
Right.
But at the same time, you can't handle it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Let's put it this way. The kids are born through sexual intercourse.
Of course.
Okay. But you don't invite them into the bedroom after they're born. Right?
That's
you know what I'm saying?
awkward.
Exactly. It's like the kids, I mean, everybody kind of gets the idea after a certain point that, hey, that's going on.
Right.
But you don't bring everybody into bed. You go to your bedroom. I'm going to go to my. So there's the times when you have to isolate yourself and have those intimate times.
Of course.
And so that's one of the things about having close friends. So there was this prophetic word that they were in our lives to be able to, I think the joke was to let our hair down with. And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay. I mean, that makes sense.
I'm bald.
Letting my hair down. But yeah, so it's a huge thing. I want to shift a little bit.
I was going to say, we should transition to...
I want to shift, and I want to talk about fathers for a minute.
Okay.
I didn't know my biological father. I mentioned that in a couple of the other episodes.
Right.
Or at least one of the other episodes. But I didn't know him. Mom's first marriage was a train wreck. He turned out to be quite abused me, abused her.
Right.
Physically abused her, sexually abused me. She got out of that relationship, remarried. He was always working. And so I wasn't able to develop it. What saved me was I went through about a 1-year process.
Okay.
Where I had my best friend who lived down the street. He was seeing this girl in school, grade school or whatever it was, maybe first year high school or whatever. It was probably 8th grade or 9th grade, whatever it was. And she says, she calls me up.
Right.
I don't want to be with him anymore.
Right.
Like, okay. Why are you, and she's like, I don't want to hurt him but I've got to tell him that I want to break up.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, you know, and I told her literally on the phone, I'm like, well, be gentle, say what you need to say, but be gentle.
Right.
Don't tell him he's a piece of crap. It's just not working out.
Right.
So I coached her through all the things to say to my friend.
Right.
To not hurt, to give him his least amount. And he literally turned on me. Oh, you were talking to her, and she said she was asking your advice on how to break up, and what the hell? And I'm like, both concerned with you, and now you're going to turn on me. So I lost him, my friend, and then I had my other friend at the same time came up, and he knew the situation, and he was like, dude, I'm your friend. You know, I'm your friend.
Right.
And so our friendship deepened at that point. But either way, at the same time, I'm dealing with a friend.
Yeah.
Okay. I was having trouble in the home because I'm a single kid.
Right.
But my mom's second marriage, I've got 2 older adopted sisters.
Right.
Right. So now all of a sudden I've got siblings and a whole group of cousins that are around me, and I'm the intruder.
Of course.
Let's say it that way.
Absolutely.
I mean, they did their best to accept me, but obviously it's a blended thing, and they, you know, my mom and I coming in the family was an impediment to their family coming back together.
You were the enemy.
Yeah. And so I had that, and then I had the dad issues. And I remember the Lord coming to me, and he said, I'm your father.
Yeah.
And it really began to settle on me over that course of that year. I'm your father. And I went, okay. And then he said, I'm your, you know, and Jesus is your older brother, and the Holy Spirit's your best friend.
Right.
Because those are the terminologies that are used.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I began to settle into that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would have been so screwed up. But I also had, exactly. So that's what I'm saying is my experience with a father, there were dads in my life, but they were not, the first one was, you know, my biological was not there, and my first experience was very twisted. If you love me, you'll do this type of bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I'm fucking 5 or 6, dude, and that's the manipulative words he's using. And I'm like, wow, dude.
Yeah.
You know, and then the second marriage, I was 10, adopted into the family and all that stuff, and I was excited to have a dad.
Yeah.
You know, and then he's works so much and busy doing all sorts of things that he's too tired to, you know, sit down and play a game of chess or to have interaction. Right. Of course, if we had a big family event, then he was there.
Right.
And I'm just hanging out. And so I felt, you know, I'm like, man, I was waiting to connect. But I connected with Grandpa.
Right.
My grandpa on my mom's side, my grandpa on my adopted father's side, and I connected with my uncles.
Absolutely.
I used to spend any number of weekends at my Uncle Ron and Aunt Barb's, or my Uncle Dave and Aunt Marcia's. And there was a couple times even with Uncle Tim. And I would, you know, be with my different uncles hanging out.
Right.
And then Grandpa Soika would take me every year fishing for a couple weeks.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as school got out.
Yeah.
And so those were times, and then I was around Grandpa Gibbs all the time on the farm. And so those were times that shaped me and molded me.
Yeah.
And helped me, because I had, as much as I missed having a direct father, you know, and that's just to say Dennis didn't do as good as he could, but he had his own hang-ups, he had his own issues.
Of course.
And he was working all the time.
Right.
I mean, if he's worked all week, and then he would come and do a side job in the yard, you know, welding somebody's thing back together.
Yeah.
And so that relationship that I was longing for wasn't there, but I appreciate so much that the Lord put my grandfathers and my uncles in my life, because they compensated for that.
Right.
I'd go spend a whole weekend with one of my uncles, you know, riding quads, or I would go sailing with my Uncle Ron, or I'd ride quads with my Uncle Dave. And so we had all these interactions. And so I gleaned from a multitude, and that's what helped me. But the bottom line, when the Lord said, I'm your father.
Right.
Then I was like, okay. So I began to just dig into scripture and study to find out what a father, and I read the father's heart, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, that's when I read the story of what we call the prodigal son.
Yeah.
And I hate that terminology, but everybody recognizes that. It's the story of the compassionate father.
Right.
Because everybody focuses on the son leaving, coming back, and he wastes all his money and he comes back and does this thing. They totally miss the whole concept that the son comes back with his rehearsed phrase, which is pretty much the sinner's prayer that you would say in any church. Of course. I've sinned against you, and I've sinned against... And what does the father do? He ignores him. He ignores his words. He doesn't ignore him. He ignores his words. He wraps his arms around him, kisses his neck. He says to the servant, get the ring, get the robe, get the sandals.
Kill the fatted calf.
Kill the fatted calf. We're going to have a party.
Right.
And his brother's the religious one in that parable that is all
Right.
pissed off. And I go, you missed the crux of the story is the compassion of the father who says, I don't care what you've done, you're back.
Right.
You've been restored to me. My son that was dead is now alive again.
Right.
And that's very significant.
Yeah.
We see that sometimes in Italian cultures or, that type of you're dead to me type of stuff.
Right.
That's what was going on there in that Middle Eastern idea is
Right.
you're dead to me. And he's like, my son who was dead to me is now alive again.
Right.
And so
Well,
that's that I was just wanting us to dive in a little bit talking about fathers because I guarantee you the majority of people on here have had some dad issue in one way or another. Now, if you were blessed and your dad was there,
awesome,
and he was already perfected by the time you came out, great.
Right.
But what helped me to be the father that I am today and helping other people to be a good father
Right.
is because of that. The Lord coming to me and me having to navigate. I didn't have the abuse,
Right.
but I had the absence. And so I had to let the Lord fill
Right.
that and bring it in. I mean, I did have the abuse in the first relationship, but I'm saying
Right.
I didn't have some asshole in my life just beating up on me on a regular basis and being negative.
Well, and that was the funny part about it when I finally ended up, in your path. Because, I'd gone through my parents split when I was 10. I had my dad for the first 10 years of my life, but you don't really have a full understanding or appreciation for what that is.
Right.
And then just absence.
And how was the home?
Oh, the home was a dumpster fire. Aside from my grandmother.
So for the first 10 years, your dad was there, but it was not a healthy environment.
No, because it was, a lot of that engagement with certain family members. If you love me, you'll do this. Mm-hmm. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah.
I do, but I'm not doing that.
Right.
And, growing up, I remember to this day being up in your studio with the big old fish tank.
Yeah.
And the ginormous fish that was,
Yeah.
and you turned and you looked at me because I was just expounding on my experiences of just a lack of a father. I mean, yes, I had positive male role models in my life.
Right.
But I'm just like, this fucking sucks. I have no idea how I'm going to be a better father than my father was just absent.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm 3 children deep.
Right.
And you turned and you looked at me and you're like, hey, he's your father too. And I'm like, who is?
Right.
And you're just like, look. And then you expounded on the story that you just told.
Yeah.
Of the absence of, and I'm like, well,
A physical father.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it was humbling because shortly after you had finished your story, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go now. And we didn't talk for like 2 days. I mean, we had interaction.
Right.
But we didn't talk for 2 days anything other than, the comments.
Casual. Passing. Yeah.
And when I came back to it, I'm like, what? He's my father too.
What the hell do you mean?
Because it sent me completely off kilter. Mm-hmm. My perspective at that point in time is I was robbed of a childhood due to complete abandonment.
Right.
And now you're telling me this epic dude in the sky with an amazing beard is my father too. Mm-hmm. I'm not buying it.
Yeah.
Give me something better.
It's not working.
And, obviously you took the time and the patience to go through and do that. But it was still an incredible thing because it's like, I'm not buying it, but what else you got? Let's explain yourself.
What else you selling, man?
Right. And, it was cool because, like we were talking about a little earlier, is the fact that I was a shitty father for at least the first 10 years of my kids' life. Mm-hmm. And now they're like, yeah, love you, Dad.
Right.
But they've seen me fail out loud.
Epically.
Epically.
And you're like, fuck.
And I take ownership of that. I was a shitty father. There's a lot of things that I could have done way better. But in turn, my kids have come to me going, you know what? I appreciate the fact that you were my dad. Mm-hmm. Even though we didn't always agree.
Right.
Because my kids are, older teens now, and they're getting out and experiencing the real world and doing those things that older teenagers do. And they come to me and go, I I wouldn't have been able to navigate this thus far if it wasn't for you being the father that you were, good, bad, and ugly. And I'm going, this is incredible because, in my opinion, I've screwed these kids up for life. They're going to need some serious therapy.
Right.
And yet they've come to me in each one of their own ways and went, thank you for being a screw up.
Right.
Because you taught me a lot of the things that I need to learn how to navigate with various different people. And like with my son, I have one son. And I'm going, dear God, if I get one thing right, please let it be my son not being an absolute dumpster fire of a father.
Right.
And, you know, he's a good kid. He's so much better of a man than I ever was at the age that he is because of that, you know, that conflict, the healthy conflict.
Right.
Now, obviously. Right. But it's that engagement of going, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, having that intimacy between the father and a son, that's the only way you can have that, is going, I'm going to call you on your bullshit.
Right.
But I'm going to love you twice as hard through that process.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And, you know, I see how you've, you know, been with your sons over the years. And I'm going, I want to be like that when I grow up.
Yeah. And again, that was, I mean, that was the Lord and the people in my life, you know, that helped and shaped me. And the funny thing was I would date girls and then I would break up with them long before, you know, they were like, why, everything's going good. I'm like, yeah, it's just getting started. And, you're not wife, mother material. So they're like, we're in 6th grade. Yeah. I can't see you raising my kids.
Wow.
You know,
I was 6th grade.
Yeah, 6th grade, dude. Yeah, there were a couple different girls I dated in 6th grade that I was like, yeah, we're breaking up. And they're like, what's the problem? Yeah, I met your family and I saw your interactions and no, we're not. No.
And here I thought I was the only one that did that stuff execution style.
No, I would. Yeah. Every relationship I was in eventually got around to, maybe, you know, it may take me a week or 2 weeks or a month, but eventually got around to, I'm like, been sizing you up, honey. And I know we all have potential for growth and we've all got to get through this, but
of course.
But I don't see you growing into Now there was one girl that I will say, one girl out of all of them that she was great, but she didn't have and she didn't have her own, she had her personality, she had her own thing, but she didn't have, I broke up with her one night because she wouldn't pick a restaurant.
Really?
Yep. I'm like, we're going to go out to eat.
Go into that.
And I would go, and I said, I'm picking you up, we're going to go out to eat.
Right.
And I want you to pick something. And I pick her up and we drive and drive and drive. And I go, where do you want to go eat? Wherever you want to go is fine with me. I said, no, where do you want to go eat? Wherever you want to go. I'm like, I need you to pick.
Right.
I need some pushback.
Right.
I need you to have an opinion on this. I need you to make a decision.
Of course.
I don't care, wherever you want to go. I said, then I'm taking you back home.
Wow. No, I totally get that.
Because I needed it's like everything else about you is awesome.
Yeah.
Except this one thing that I need most. I need pushback. I need you to be a little testy at times. Not get into a fight or an argument with me, but I need you to have an opinion. I need you to be able to say, this is how I feel about it.
Absolutely.
If you're going to be, and I knew it even at that time, maybe definitely not to the fullness that I understand now, but I knew at the time your wife is your chief. Like in the mafia, they had the consigliere.
Of course,
the father, the godfather, and then his right hand man, who was a consigliere, who would go, "Boss, that's a fucking stupid thing to do." He was the only guy that could say that to the boss and not get
sleeping with the fishes.
Exactly. And so I'm like, in Scripture, there's actually a pretty clear picture, if you pay attention, that the wife is that for her husband.
Oh, absolutely.
She is the chief advisor. In fact, it's in part of the definition of calling her a woman. She's the called beside or the helpmate, and it literally means the answering unto. is one of the definitions, and answering unto. So literally he's like, I've got to make decisions and I need the best advice that I can possibly get. What are you seeing that I'm not seeing? Because I'm going to make a decision for our whole family,
right,
and I need your opinion on this. And
right.
she goes, well, and she gives her, and here was this great girl, and she just couldn't give me her opinion. She couldn't give me pushback. And I'm like, I got to trust that you're not just going to say yes
to everything that I
do. I've got to know that you can go, I know you're really deep in this and emotionally driven by it, but that's not going to be a good decision, honey, if you make it. But I'm with you no matter what. That's the position. And she was just like, no, whatever you want. And I'm like, then I'm going to take you home. I love you.
Right.
But this isn't working out.
See, and that's what's been, interesting, hearing all kinds of conversations like that through the course of the years, and seeing people, doing just that, sizing them up and trying to establish that healthy boundaries and guidelines of going, give me some pushback. I want to be a better person.
Right.
And I don't know how to do that if it's yes, 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 yes.
Right.
It's, yeah, you can do better.
Exactly. And that's the key to it, is you can come in and go, look, we're doing all right.
Right.
It's not bad. It's not horrible.
Right.
But we can do a hell of a lot better.
Right.
And here's what we need to do. But then there's also times when somebody pulls you aside, and I've had to teach, I don't know how many people that. It's like that, the movie from Crimson Tide.
Yeah.
And he's like, you've got something to say to me? He's like, yeah. He's like, okay. In front of the men, to maintain the chain of command, if you've got something to say, you wait and you take me aside.
Right.
You don't do it in front of them. He said, in front of the other men, you bite your fucking tongue. And I remember that. I always remember that line. I'm like, that's it right there.
Right.
And I've had to say it to my superintendent. I've had to say it to, guys who've worked for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, we can have a discussion.
Absolutely.
We can have a conversation.
Absolutely.
But you need to know the environment we're in.
Yeah.
And you need to be aware of our surroundings. And if it's going to affect something else here, we're not doing it.
There's a certain etiquette that you have to follow to not upset the apple cart, because a lot of people take that out of context of, oh, did you see what he did? Did you see what he said? What? That's weakness.
Well, and they call people out, listen, if you're intimate with me,
yeah,
and we're close friends,
absolutely,
you're going to have the integrity to pull me aside in private,
absolutely,
and say something. You're not going to do it in front of everybody.
Right.
Because if you're doing it in front of everybody, it's not intimate, it's not connected, it's not close.
Well, and that's this funny part about it, is so many people, especially on a platform like this.
Yeah.
We have no idea how many people are going to see this video. And
thousands and thousands.
Right. But that's my point.
It.
Is they're going to be nitpicking every single mannerism.
They're gonna be.
Did you hear what he said?
He said shit.
When he said,
he used the F word.
It's like, this part, he was sitting there and he was, all pompous and whatever. And this part, he was really uncomfortable and he tuned out of the conversation. And it's all of these stupid things. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Just what is the engagement? What is the interaction?
Right.
Of, you help me through this. You help me through this. I've had this experience.
Yeah.
With these people. We've had this engagement with each other, good, bad, or ugly.
Right.
It's about navigating through love, through intimacy, through vulnerability. Of, you're gonna fuck up sometimes.
Right.
I'm gonna fuck up sometimes.
Profoundly.
Take responsibility.
Both profoundly.
Right.
Yeah.
Take responsibility.
Yeah.
For those shortcomings or those missteps, or
that's all it is.
Right.
Own it.
And let's move forward together. And having a platform like this to reach out to other people to go, I've been meaning to have that conversation. I've been meaning to have that conversation with myself.
Yeah.
And this is the catalyst.
Right.
Of what is love?
Right.
What is intimacy?
What does it really mean? Yeah.
What does it look like when someone respectfully calls me on my bullshit and goes, you can do better with that.
Right.
I know you better than anyone out there because of the relationship that we have.
Exactly.
And you can go,
No, it's the freaking. How do you see the little kid?
Yeah.
Mel Gibson's making the chairs in The Patriot.
Yeah.
He makes the chairs and it breaks and he wants to whip it and he looks over and his daughter's sitting and she goes, Dude, it's an awesome scene.
I love that scene.
Whole sequence is phenomenal.
Yeah.
She's just like, and he's like, oh. He calms right down. He's like, okay. And what it's demonstrating in that movie is the passion that he has just under the surface, because it later comes into play.
Of course.
In the movie, but yeah, that scene is phenomenal. So we've had some. I don't know that anybody. They used to say, "Well, you have a very dysfunctional family." Not directly to me, but they use the term dysfunctional family, and I go,
right.
I'm of the opinion that family in and of itself is a dysfunction, because if you've got it right, mom, dad, they're in the helm, kids are balanced, everything's all good. You didn't have the opposition you needed that caused the turmoil in the family. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
So like if you get the perfect family, you're imperfect because you didn't have the shit that everybody else went through to make you strong and tight.
Right.
It's very, very, very rare that you have that tight-knit family like that has gone through opposition. The parents did what they were supposed to do. The kids were everything they were supposed to. It's like the norm is to have a fucked up family, one way or another. But how we persevere through that, how we grow up through that, makes all the difference in the world. You know,
absolutely.
How many people have you fathered that were not your kids? How many people have I fathered that were not my kids? You know, that I took in, that I,
absolutely,
sometimes housed them, sometimes just took them under my wing, whatever, and fathered them and mentored them.
Yeah.
And poured into them and loved on them and then gave them some tough love now and then.
Oh, absolutely.
So that they could grow up and be a better person. Now, if they had everything all squared away, they wouldn't need me, first and foremost.
Right.
But if they had, it's like we've got a family's this. Right. This is family.
Right here.
Right?
Yeah.
They use that terminology and they say, well, blood is thicker than water. And they totally take it out of context.
Oh, of course.
They go, well, I've heard people say that to me. They're like, well, they're not actually family. Blood is thicker than water. And I go, yeah, cut myself.
Right.
You cut yourself.
Right.
The blood covenant that we just made there is thicker than the water of the womb of the birth canal.
Absolutely.
That's what that phrase was saying. Blood is thicker than water. A blood covenant that we make as from two different families where we're from. That blood covenant is stronger than the fact that we both came out of the same womb.
Right.
Or a genetically connected wombs. Right. Because that's the water they were talking about.
Of course.
They go, well, blood's thicker than water. And I go, okay. And so they're like, the family blood's thicker than water. And I go, then what does the water represent? And they go, and I go, no, it was the blood of a covenant.
Right.
That was binding.
Right.
I mean, read through the Old Testament, you'll find just example after example after example.
Oh, yeah.
It says they cut a covenant.
Yes.
And people are like, what does it mean they cut a covenant? And they're thinking they just, let's sign some paperwork. No, they literally cut themselves.
Right.
And commingled their blood.
There was a visible scar.
They cut a covenant.
Right.
Sometimes minor covenants or sales that would happen, they would exchange a shoe. They would exchange a sandal.
Right.
To signify, somebody goes, oh, you must have made a transaction, didn't you? Yeah, and this one's a little small.
I'm missing my shoe.
I pity the fool to take my shoe. But that's when we're talking about this stuff, families can be very jacked up.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's the people that are around you that are the real family, that are your real brothers, that are the real connections that you have. That's what we're striving for. That's what we're working towards.
Absolutely.
Is that level of connection, intimacy, all that stuff.
How we doing on time, Nate?
Our timer broke over here, buddy. I wouldn't say broke, it died.
Yeah.
I forgot to charge the tablet over there.
Oops.
It's my bad. So I'm going to read this one out of Ecclesiastes.
Yeah, go ahead.
This. Ecclesiastes chapter 7. And Ecclesiastes is very interesting because the setup for a lot of these is strange. In this meaningless life of mine, I have seen both of these. So
I'll tell you why I'm laughing in a minute. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The righteous perishing in their righteousness, and the wicked living long in their wickedness. And he says, do not be overly, this is what I wanted to get to, but you had it set up. Do not be overly righteous, neither overly wise. Why destroy yourself?
Right.
Then do not be overly wicked.
Right.
Do not be a fool. Why die before your time? It is good to grasp one and not let go of the other. Whoever fears God will avoid all extremes. Whoever fears God will avoid all extremes.
Right.
I'm not going to be too foolish, but I'm not going to be overly wise.
Right.
I'm not going to be too righteous, but I'm not going to be too wicked. I'm not going to be overly wicked or overly wise. For me, this platform is one way that I step into that balance.
Right.
Because we cuss, we drink, we have some good times, but at the same time, we're enjoying, we're avoiding extremes, coming to a place of balance, talking about love, talking about relationships, talking about intimacy, talking about all of these connection points.
Absolutely.
And yet we're totally real. I don't feel like I'm on a platform and I've got to censor myself because some jocko over there.
When you look at you brought up the analogy of the car and the battery and this and that. Of how you drive and then you have a discipline and you care about whether you're hurting somebody out on the road.
Right.
When you look at the very core foundation of the power, what does the battery have? Positive and negative.
Right.
And they have to work together.
They have to flow and create a circuit.
Right.
And it goes from one pole and it gravitates towards the other.
Right.
It's compensating. It's trying to create. That's what a battery is doing all the time, is trying to create the balance. Nate, come over here from behind your computer. This is Nate. Do you got the camera on? This one on? So you got my camera on?
Yeah.
All right, so read your, I want you to read what you sent over here as you were communicating.
I said blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family.
Absolutely. I wanted you to read that because I didn't want to just repeat your words since you're sitting right here. But that's exactly right, dude. Blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you family.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, it's like, that's why blood is thicker than water.
Right.
This idea, it's like the blood of the covenant, the blood that we have. And you've had some, some things with your life, some of the difficulties that you've had that we've helped you work through, predominantly Tony.
Right.
But, we had some good times on the fishing trip, and you've come to hang out in the man cave and done some, So it's a matter of family is the people that are close to you and around you that love you versus necessarily paperwork and biology.
Well, and that's the thing is there's been several times where Nate and I have been in the mobile office, going to a gig or going to a festival or whatever it was that we were doing.
Yeah.
And literally blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah. Thank you, Nate.
We have shed together in navigating this life. Whether, we're getting drowned at the Relay for Life gig because there's a monsoon that washes in. Or we're picking up a road case and getting cut the same way and bleeding on each other, going, well, we should probably get a towel or something or to wipe this up because we got to go on stage in 5 minutes.
Right.
And experiencing that collectively going, you're bleeding, I'm sweating, you're sweating.
Right.
You're drowned because of a monsoon, or this was just an absolute shit show. And I'm bummed out that I'm to the point of being so emotionally overcome with all of this.
Right.
I have no other option right now than to just break down into tears.
Right.
And, like we had talked about in the other episode, of being in that mental and emotional trenches of that loyalty of brotherhood. And I mean, it's incredible because it's like, I don't have to tell you how fucked up life can be because I've lived through it with you.
Right.
And, having those fondness and memories where, tons of situations that you and I have experienced going, well, that sucks. Where do we go from here?
Let's see what we're going to do.
Right.
Let's recover. Let's figure this out.
And yet, that opposition that you were talking about.
You got to have it.
Has, proven more times than not to be some of the best educators. I mean, some of our biggest failures through the course of our lives
Yeah.
has redefined us.
We would all love to have the learn the lesson the first time straight through, just get the lesson and move through.
Absolutely.
And just take the test and we're good.
Right.
9 times out of 10, that never works that way.
Nope.
You've got to go through the school of hard knocks, the street school, to actually get it.
I graduated with a doctorates, man.
Well, it's a matter of where people. It always amazes me. I've encountered a number of engineers and those types of people.
Yeah.
Right. They're all about the theory, all about the paperwork, and all about that.
The textbook application.
Yeah, and I don't know how many times we've said, I really would like for this engineer to have to come and work on this.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, wait a minute. You engineered this and you got it to work.
Right.
But now it's having a breakdown in one area, and I've got to, vehicles are a big one. It's like, I've got to have,
Right.
you got to have you, wasn't there a Mustang? It was one of the vehicles years and years and years ago. You literally had to change the spark plugs. You literally had to drop the lower part. You had to put it on a hoist and drop the lower part of the car off in order to get to a couple of the spark plugs. It was just ridiculous, dude.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I can't remember, maybe not a Mustang, but it was one of those cars where they literally put the car was upside down the way that it was set up, and the motor was upside down. And the spark plugs were up from underneath. So you had to go from underneath to get to them. And it's like, wow, dude. And so there's so many things that you didn't make this in such a way. Maybe in their hubris, they thought they could engineer it to be perfect. It's like, somebody's going to have to work on this.
Right.
And the way you engineered it sucks.
Yeah.
But, that's one of the aspects of being around those people. They don't have that practicality.
Right.
They don't have that street application. And it's like, you can read out of the textbook, dude. We can all read out of the textbook.
But until you actually do it.
Get in the streets and figure it out, bro.
Right.
That's the big thing. So we're coming up on what? We got about another 20 minutes, Nate? Yeah. So let's finish up with absolutes. We talked about Ecclesiastes and balance and stuff like that. So I want to finish up with absolutes. What does it mean? You and I have both endured a heavy-duty amount of absolutes in the church, particularly. But there's a lot of these absolutes, and I believe they're completely misplaced.
Of course.
Because they're absolutes in the wrong areas. This is absolutely wrong. This is absolutely wrong. This is absolutely... So when you say... What they do is they have this issue. Reason they can't talk about intimacy from the pulpit is because most of the things that involve sex are absolutely wrong.
Right.
It's wrong, 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 it's wrong. But if you walk down the aisle, it's all right.
Right.
And you go...
That's an excuse to share intimacy. Or at least cover it up from a...
Right. So they don't... So what they do is they go way too far with the application of what is wrong. And then it's like, can I lust after my own wife?
Yeah, you can be a dirty, nasty freak as long as you're married to her.
No, that's what I'm saying. They suppress and suppress and suppress and suppress. And then when you get married, it's got to be this sterile, and I always thought about, particular groups of people that, particular sects of Christianity, their denominations. And it's like, okay, so sex is bad, sex is bad, sex is bad, sex is bad, sex is bad.
Right.
You've got 12 kids.
Exactly.
And I go, okay, I'm missing something here.
Right. There's a disconnect.
So they don't teach. I'm a firm believer. If you teach how wonderful sex is in a committed relationship and you couch it in that phrase, instead of suppressing the whole subject, you would. I mean, dude, some of the practices that they would have. What was the practice where they put the sheet between you? There's still a practice where they have a sheet between you.
Yeah.
So that the only part is your sex organs touching skin to skin.
Yeah.
That's a crazy one.
Oh,
What's the one where they bundle them up? That was portrayed in that movie, The Patriot.
Yeah.
So they bundle them all up so that they're tied up in a bag.
Yeah.
And can't touch each other.
Right.
And they're like, they're gonna, so that they could sleep together in the bed.
Of course.
But not do anything, not touch anything. Because they're not married yet.
Right.
And it's like, dude, I used to say this too, or I've come to say this a lot. they say, well, they're not married. And I go, if you taught it properly and gave people to understand, you wouldn't have to teach about abstinence from the way that you're abstinence. No, sex, bad
Right.
sex, bad sex. No. When you sleep with somebody, you're marrying them. You're
Right.
making what consummates a marriage?
Right.
Intercourse.
Right.
Joining. That's why Paul said wrote in
Right.
in Corinthians, and he said, he who joins himself to a prostitute is one with her in body.
Right.
He was saying, you are marrying her.
Well,
So if you don't want to be married to a prostitute,
yeah, right.
you might want to get your sexual appetites under control and find a committed relationship to get into. In
Right.
fact, he says that. He says, listen, since there's so much immorality, sexual immorality,
Right.
get married.
Right.
And marry the right person,
Of course.
do the research, but get married so that you're not burning with lust and having all these issues.
Right.
But that's it. If we would teach it from that perspective and say, look, you're marrying this person.
Right.
And they go, what? Well, I don't want to be married to that person.
Panic.
Well,
Right.
Then don't sleep with that person because you're making a commitment, and
Right.
that has ramifications. It has carryover, not just disease wise. It has ramifications and carryover that you're making a commitment to somebody and then walking out on your commitment. It makes you go back on your word. It makes you.
Right.
It has ramifications for the rest of your life.
Right. And teaching that empowerment of use a little discretion, use a little discernment here,
Yeah.
instead of just jumping into sack with whoever. Okay, think about this long term.
How's this going to turn out?
Right. Do you want to jump in the sack with a Taiwanese hooker? Probably not. It's not going to end well. Do you want to find someone that is your counterpart?
Right.
Enjoy their company, kind of iron sharpens iron type process.
Right.
And someone that's going to challenge you.
Your friend, your best friend.
Right. I've said it for years. Good God, first coming into your life all these years ago, I want to fall in love with my best friend day after day after day, deeper and deeper and harder each and every day.
Mm-hmm.
Know anybody that can possibly fit for my best friend? Because it's one of those things I'm constantly trying to use discernment.
You also got to temper it too.
Right.
Because, it's best friend in a category, in a best friend in a group of parameters.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like Tanya doesn't play hockey with me.
Right.
So I've got my best friends that I play hockey with.
Of course.
I got my best friend that I sit and do podcasts with.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's not just she's your absolute best friend and the only person you interact with.
Right.
But at the same time, in that category,
Right.
she's your best friend as well as your lover.
Absolutely. And
You know?
that's where a lot of people try to navigate that. And they're just like, oh, I've been around this person 24/7. Best friends do take a break from each other.
You have to.
Or are you going to drive each other insane?
Well, and I don't say that from a negative standpoint that you
Right.
have to. I want to go and experience something and come back and tell you about it.
Exactly.
I want you to share in the joy of me retelling that.
Yes.
And there's certainly experiences we can have together.
Yeah.
You know, But I walk in the door and she goes, "How was hockey today?" And she's come to all my games when I had games. But
Right.
when I'm just doing drop-ins, she doesn't go to that.
Right.
Right. But she's, "How was hockey today?" I'm like, "Oh, I won this game, won that game, lost this game, lost that game.
Lost
I had this
the
great
kneecap.
save. I had this, that was a couple months ago.
Right.
Anyway, so, but we're talking about these absolutes and stuff like that. Again,
Right.
that was a good one right
Yeah,
there.
absolutely.
That the woman you want to be with, you want her to be absolutely be your best friend.
Oh, yeah.
And your lover,
Yes.
passionately. But at the same time, she's not your only best friend. So she's not.
Exactly.
So when you say I want my best friend, doesn't mean you get rid of everybody else.
Right.
And so we've got all these absolutes in these areas. Well, absolutely, smoking's not wrong. Well, you want to have a cigar?
Yeah.
I got friends that are like, "Oh, well, I don't smoke." Okay, neither do I.
Do you want to smoke a hookah with me?
Yeah, you want to smoke a cigar?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And you go, so when you have all these absolutes and you set yourself up for
Yeah,
failure,
absolutely.
And there's people out there who go, "Oh, I would never do that." I go, "Okay," but there's other things that you've done.
Right.
There's other things you've done, and the problem is when you set yourself up. Listen, I may have a DeJoram clove cigarette
Those are so good.
or a cigar,
Right.
right? And I may have. I'm going to definitely have a glass of Di Serono or another adult beverage.
Right.
They need to sponsor us.
Markham, if you're listening, Cabernet.
Yeah. And Di Serono. Yeah. I don't know if I'll pull the ice cube out and lick it, but that is some delicious stuff.
That's an absolute.
I've been drinking that for what, 10 years now?
About that, yeah. Yeah.
I used to think those commercials were stupid.
Now you drink it.
And I drink it, and I'm like, somebody grabbed my glass the other day. I was like, what are you doing? They're like, what's empty? I'm like, no, there's ice. It's got the hint and fragrance of Disaronno all over it. Don't touch my glass. But anyways, my point is that when we're dealing with all these absolutes, right? And people are like, I absolutely don't drink, and I absolutely don't do this, and I absolutely don't this. And I go, you know what? You know what my absolutes are? I'm going to absolutely love.
Right.
And I'm absolutely love you as my friend.
Yeah.
I'm going to absolutely do my best in all my work.
Right.
I'm going to absolutely do my best to keep my word when I give it. And if I gave it if I misspoke and gave my word, I will do my best to honor however I can and back myself out of that commitment. Because there's times when you go, oh yeah, and then you realize, oh shit, I didn't check my schedule well enough to know that I can't do that. I'm sorry.
Right.
So there's times when you do that, but you do on the big things, on the major things, you do your best. You're going to make the best decision you can. So those are the absolutes that we need to focus in on. I'm going to absolutely forgive. I may not forget.
Right.
Because if I can forgive you, keep my heart clean.
Right.
But if you continue to do the same things over and over again, at a certain point, what does it say? It also says in Scripture, it says, warn a divisive person once, warn him a second time, and after that, have nothing to do with him.
Right.
So I can forgive you.
Right.
But if you're continuing the behavior, at a certain point, I'm going to say,
right.
There's the door, buddy.
Yeah.
I hope you change, but you're not going to change on my dime.
Right.
You're not going to do it on my time and my dime. So those are the areas we got to start honing in on for absolutes. I'm going to absolutely do the best be the best father that I can be for my kids, to the best of my ability. And where I fail, I'll apologize and let them know so that they can grow beyond me. They can be better than me.
Oh, that's huge. I mean, it's so funny. Bill, in fact, was one of the ones. He's like, "Wow, dude, how do you do that?" I was like, "How do I do what?" He's like, "You went up and apologized to your son for being short with him." And I'm like, well, dude, kids watch everything.
Yeah.
And if you're focusing on all of these things that you have to teach them, I'm like, they're also learning things that you don't teach them.
Do you want them to be better than you? Do you want them to grow beyond you? Right. Do you want them to be the best? I used to say to my kids, I know you heard me say it to them.
Oh,
I would say, I don't care what you do in life.
Right.
All things being equal, by and large, I don't care what you do in life. I never wanted my daughter to swing from a pole, and she never did.
Right.
For money. I mean, if she does that in the privacy of her home with.
Right. I gotcha.
And my boys never did. It's like I always said to them. I said, I don't care what you do.
Right.
I want you to find out what you're passionate about.
Yes.
And I want you to do it with all your heart.
Yes.
And I want you to exceed me. I want you to go beyond what I've done.
Absolutely.
As far as a person being fulfilled, doing all that stuff. That's what I desire for you. I don't care about the rest of this stuff. I mean, all three of my kids are high school dropouts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. My one son works for me full time, doing construction.
Yep.
Phenomenal. He's an integral part of the crew. My other son is head welder, just got a big raise.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, at his job.
Mad respect.
Nicole just got a raise and got certified, and to get her teaching certificate, she's like, oh my goodness, I don't have my GED. So she went and quickly took her GED and aced all of it. She got like 100% in her English. She got, aced all the other questions. And she's, I got texts. She's like, Dad, I did this, and Dad, I did that. Because she got to the 10th grade and she got disillusioned by the way school was doing stuff. And I said, honey, I said, if you want to drop, your brother's dropped out.
Yeah.
Because Vince, I think he was in the first semester, and he was just falling behind.
Right.
They're like, he's not doing his homework, but he's acing every test. So they call him in the school, and they're like, he's cheating. He's not doing
I
homework.
remember that. Yeah.
And I went so they put him in detention for 2 weeks, and he finished all of his homework for like a whole semester in that 2 weeks.
Right.
And then he came back, and they're like, well, he's got to be cheating. I'm like, no. And they put him in a room by himself and gave him a test, and he aced it. And I'm like, he's smarter than you.
Right.
He gets bored in class. They put him in detention for 2 weeks. He catches up on his homework. And I said, what do you want to do, son? He said, this is boring. I don't want to do this.
Right.
I said, okay, if you want, drop out. And no one, if you met my children, would ever accuse them of being unintelligent
Oh God.
or dispassionate
Absolutely.
or uneducated. They're extremely educated.
Yeah.
I mean, I've watched all three of my kids because they get it. That's what I've always done.
Yeah.
All three of my kids will stop and go grab their phone, grab whatever's there, and look shit up
Oh yeah.
and study it. I watched, Al. I watched Al when he's doing cars. He was looking up all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
For motors.
Right.
I'm watching Vince look up stuff he wants to do. Right now he's been on this kick about doing a kiln because he wants to melt metal and do some stuff like that. And And he's like, Dad, if we just do this and we do that, I looked it up and we can do this and we can do that. And I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
figure it out. So again, it's that same situation
Right.
where their passion, superseded that institutional education.
Oh, absolutely.
And so we're looking at, with all of them, I'm like, do what you need to do.
Right.
But again, what I said to my kids from the beginning is, I don't care what you do. Do it with all your heart. Do it with your passion.
Right.
And once you figure it out,
Right.
I'm going to back you 100%
Oh yeah.
in doing it, because that's where we're, that's our relationship. And so my kids are doing what they're passionate about. It took them a little while to get through that, to navigate through that stuff.
Yep.
But they've all pushed through that, finding themselves and figuring it out.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have never. Well, I think Bart being in our lives, really opened Al's eyes to welding.
Oh, absolutely.
And now he's really passionate about that. He loves to weld, and his welds are gorgeous. And he'll walk in.
He was showing me some
Who
of the
welded
stuff
that
on his.
shit? That looks like garbage.
It's so funny because, I've had that exact same conversation with my kids.
Yeah.
Of I don't give a shit what you do.
Right.
Go figure it out. Take the time. Do the due diligence to
Yeah.
find out who you are and what you are passionate about.
Right.
And then go blow everybody else out of the water, because that is your one thing that sets you apart from everyone else.
Absolutely.
And it's incredible to watch that. Like my son, he saw Al playing drums.
Yeah.
He's like, I want to do that. And I'm like, cool. And I, sat down, kind of gave him a little bit of direction. And he's like, yeah, get out of here, old man.
Yeah. What do you know?
And it was great because then kind of that,
Yeah. What was it? Was it Labor Day that he was down here with everybody?
Yeah.
And he just jumped. At some point,
It started killing it.
He jumped on the kit, and we all went, "Is that Sean?" Holy shit, dude! Tear it up, bro.
Well, and it was funny because, that kind of full circle moment, because, obviously growing up with your kids too, and just incredibly beautiful human beings inside and out.
Yeah. Thank you. Absolutely. I'm so proud.
Well, and Al came back around. He's like, hey, man, he's like, your dad had a huge hand in kind of showing me the way. He's like, pay attention to what he's doing.
Right.
And Sean's like,
Really?
oh, shit, really?
Yeah.
And it was
If you
great.
think I can drum well?
Right.
He gave me tips and pointers and told me how to. Yeah, because my kids learned music from just being around the environment.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, my dude, talk about a hands-on experience. My kids were surrounded, practice twice a week, and then whoever showed up at any given time, we'd go up in the music room and jam out. And yeah, so when Ryan left his drums there because we were practicing all the time, and he was like, "Just don't break the skins." They're like, "Really?" So Al and Vince would go up there and
pound it out, man.
Yeah.
And it was great watching that and being able to experience a lot of that with my kids. They play, I don't want to say fluently, but they play proficiently pretty much anything that they can pick up and then bang out a tune on, All of them play piano fairly efficiently because they just left it out.
Right.
I'm like, don't break it.
Don't break it.
Put it away when you're done with it.
Yeah. Be respectful and honorable.
But
Tear it up.
Yeah, write something.
Which was, for me, more, I didn't come from a musical family from my mom's side.
Right.
But my biological father, there's pictures of him and all sorts of, they were all in bands.
Right.
Right. I kind of go, that's one of the other things I go, I didn't know my biological father. It is what it is. I won't say it's probably a good thing or a bad thing or whatever, but I didn't know you, but you were a musician
right
all the time.
Right.
Now, there's the dichotomy. Right?
Yeah.
Because he was a musician, he probably had a lot of the same things that musicians have.
Of course.
Especially musicians who don't
The 3Ds.
ultimately make it. Right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, that talent and that experience,
Oh, absolutely.
and that it's like, I kind of wish I'd have had a little bit of that, but at the same time, when I married the other family, Grandpa Gibbs, he was the dude that played. He had the harmonica strap, the guitar here, and the steel guitar with his feet.
Oh yeah,
and would jam out a whole. I mean, just jam it out.
Oh yeah,
it was all Jesus music, and nothing wrong with that. But I mean, he was kind of isolated in that area, but he still had a. And I would be able to go. I remember the first guitars and bass.
Yeah.
He had this cabinet, dude, this huge cabinet, and he had the bass, and the bass literally said "bad bass" on it.
That's great.
And so I would go in there and I'd plug into this old Vox, fucking huge.
Oh yeah.
The old Vox.
And
I'd plug into that,
this.
and it had the big light with it looked like a ruby. It's all faceted on the top.
Yeah.
I'd kick that puppy on and I'd be like, bong, 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 bong. I probably drove him nuts, I'm just like, is there if I go in there, Grandpa? Yeah, kid, get in there. Bong, 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 bong. And I'm just playing this thing, and it's like, wow, dude, this is incredible. And then I would do the same thing with guitars.
Oh, absolutely.
Picking one string at a time just to figure, tin, 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 tin. And I didn't care about scales. I didn't care about notes. I didn't care about anything else. I cared about the music. I cared about, what was the sound that was coming out. And so there was so many things, and even today, there's so many things. I know my scales. I know my music and stuff like that.
Right.
You know that.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm playing in such a way to hear the notes, to hear the tones, and I'm like, ooh, I like the way that fits together.
Right.
And then there's sometimes where I go, Tony, hear this. Bum, ba, dun, 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 dun. And I go, what would come next in the scale?
Right.
And you go, oh, that's this. Ba, da, da. And I go, does that fit with what I'm doing? Let's try something different. Let's try something close to that.
Right.
Because I'm going by the tone.
Right.
Because I'm coming from a singer's mindset.
Right.
Whereas you're coming from predominantly from an instrumentation aspect. But either way, we're listening to the atmosphere. We're listening to the flow of things and finding the proper position in that. And I think that's what this is all about when we're talking about love.
Absolutely.
And absolutes and where we're at. It's like absolutely love people. Absolutely encourage people. Encourage yourself. Love yourself.
Right.
Work on all these details with everything that you're doing.
And take the time to be honest with all of that. If it's not working, be honest about it. If it is working.
Yeah. Just like with our kids, when you go, hey, look, I mess up, what's up? I'm learning to be a dad. You're learning to be a kid. Let's work this thing out. Let's not screw each other up too much. Let's do the best we can. But I want you to be the best.
Yeah.
And be your better self. Not according to what I think you should do, but according to who you were created to be.
Right. Love hard, love on purpose. And I mean, sometimes that gets messy.
Yeah.
You're going to have blood, sweat, and tears. You're going to be in the mental and emotional trenches of life.
Right.
Especially when you're venturing into areas that you simply have no idea how to navigate.
Yeah.
And when it gets messy, that's when you're probably moving in the right direction.
Absolutely.
This feels uncomfortable. This feels unfamiliar. I'm not sure how to navigate this. Be honest with yourself and go, okay, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I'm doing.
Right.
I spent those 3 days here after I was, not doing okay mentally and emotionally because I was going through a difficult time this summer with being away from my kids.
Right.
And you're like, do you?
Well, we had some great conversation, and then you're like, I need to vent my way. And
Yeah.
you sat down and wrote a bunch of music, and I came in and wrote some lyrics and sang to some of it, and and we did the thing,
And that helped me, one, obviously love myself, love hard, love on purpose.
Yeah.
And get rid of the distractions and get rid of the fallacies of the things that I was telling myself. You need to be a better father. You need to be more available. You need to do this and you need to do that. And it was all just this crap coming from the other side of the fence. And I'm going, really? Is that?
Right.
You have this relationship with your kids. Why are you so hard on yourself?
You end up trying to overdo.
Right.
instead of just relaxing and doing.
Right.
And then navigating moment to moment.
Right.
To be the best. So you got to get your heart intent right, but then just go with the moments.
And when I got here and, confided in you and talked about a few different things that were heavily bothering me, you're like, dude, go do you.
Yeah.
We're going to go off and do some stuff.
Yep.
And you came back and you're like, wow.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was great because when I finally came back home after the duration of being here, my son's like, wow, you really needed that vacation, Dad.
Yeah.
I'm like, thank you for understanding that.
Right. That I needed a break.
Right. And it wasn't the fact that I was taking a break from him. It was taking a break from...
Sometimes you got to get out of your environment. And
the battle that goes on here and here,
mm-hmm.
and the battle that goes on between here and here.
Right.
Sometimes you just got to go, nope, I'm going to some place that's comfortably uncomfortable, and I'm going to trudge through this garbage to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And still navigate things. Because, I mean, I'm a person who deals with anxiety. That's an absolute for me.
Right.
It's not something that is, okay, today's grade is gone. No, it's always there.
Right.
Just some days are better than others.
Yeah.
And being in an environment like this, where it's uncomfortable enough to grow
right
through that opposition, but still in an environment that is more than comfortable enough to go work your process.
Do you.
Take the time to reassess the due diligence, redefine, rediscover who you truly are.
Absolutely.
In the process of all of this, because it's a sanctuary. It's a loving, intimate, vulnerable environment
mm-hmm.
to where it's a safe space with rules and boundaries and guidelines of, you fuck up, I'm calling you on your shit.
Right. But I'm still going to love you.
But I'm still going to love you.
Yeah.
With every ounce of my being, because that was me, or that is me right now.
Right.
And then it's a lot of that mentorship too,
mm-hmm.
where, you pointed out Nate and a handful of other kids that have come into our lives, and I say that respectfully, that here we are, we went through this stuff, we figured out how to navigate it.
Yeah.
Here's a couple of, road signs of, if this is where you're at, try this. If it works, cool.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't, try this.
Right.
I'm not going to put my, application of how I did things, because you're a completely different person.
Right.
But through the love, through the intimacy, through the balance, through the fatherhood, through the absolution of, we're connected.
Right.
I'm going to do my best to help you because I do love you.
Absolutely. So that's what it's about, finding that balance, having the absolutes in your life in the right areas.
Right.
And I'm blessed to have a place where I can not only provide that, because I bask in that atmosphere as well, even when nobody's here. So when other people come and enjoy that atmosphere, it's so paramount. I hope that everybody's enjoyed this episode. Love Part 3, I guess we'll call it. We talked about a lot of different things, but love was the central idea.
Yeah.
So I want to thank everybody for joining us. As always, if you're offended, sorry about that. Can't help that. We're gonna speak our hearts and minds.
Absolutely.
But I don't think the majority are offended. I think the majority of people are really enjoying these. We're getting a lot of good feedback already. But either way, this has been My Brain. This is My Brain. I'm Jeremy Scott Gibbs, and the earwig, as usual, Mr. Tony Bradley, who's crawled inside and wiggled around in my brain. Stop. So we thank you for joining us, and with that, we're out.
Absolutely.
This is My Brain.
Dad, that's an egg.
Yeah, that's an egg.
Honey,
Dude.
that's an egg.
Seriously.
Yeah.
That's an egg.
It's a metaphor.
Yeah, but that's an egg.
That's an egg.
All right, Jeremy, I hate to break it to you, that's an egg.
I know my brain is not actually an egg, okay? It's a metaphor.
Metaphor or not, that's not your brain.
It's just an egg.
Una cerveza para mí.
My egg is my brain.
It's still an egg.
Can I at least have some bacon, maybe some sausage with that egg, though?
Oh, I want some bacon.
I don't know, man. I'm not good at this shit.
I want crepes.
Can I
Okay.
have some bacon and pancakes with that egg?
I'll take it with scrambled eggs and cheese.